Okay, so yeah, I'm back on live. I'm just explaining a little bit of what I've learned, in terms of my journey now that I've been in South Africa for around 4 years now. And what I continue to try to, teach those back home in America is that you can pursue a different type of life, but it takes a little bit of guts, it takes a little bit of risk and reward. And, we kind of are in more of a safe environment, in like a real sheltered, privileged environment sometimes in America. And it's on a macro level. Like on a micro level, yes, you may have your dangers, just in the streets of where you're from. But on the macro level, you're overall sheltered. Versus like where I am now, like, I'm in the mountains of eThekwini. And I can, run into a lot of things. Like they have, I guess, snakes out here. They've told me. I've seen a snake or two, but nothing that I feel like I couldn't handle if I, just see it. They're more afraid of us, than we are of them. Because animals, they're, I have a real respect for animals, but I also know the difference between animals and us is that we are able to basically, just master our environment a little bit, without basically the time it takes for a snake to be able to master a spider. Like they have basically the skills to master their environment, but humans can do it in a different type of way. Like we have the consciousness that separates us to be able to see, something and turn it into a whole new manifestation based upon our thought patterns. And that's something that I've been able to nurture, in the long term. But in terms of like the immediate ways that I've been able to nurture it is through just confidence. And that confidence has been built, through a level of discernment. And that discernment is basically like seeing that you have an inner impulse and that inner intuition. And what that inner intuition can either bring you is something that is based out of love or something that's based out of fear. And that's like my immediate way of discerning, what is the pathway for me. And, but in the beginning, like you may have less of a trust of that. But later on in life, you can see just that the fear that may have, captured you or stopped you from pursuing things. Like, for an example, like I know a lot of men, like we try to boast that we're confident and all this stuff. But, you always have that younger time when you may be afraid to talk to a girl, or you have some level of just fear in terms of pursuing some action that would make you more popular with your peers. But eventually you kind of got to break out of that. And the way to do it, in my opinion, is to start to exercise basically that muscle. And exercising that muscle comes in different formats, to where like you stop judging things. Like, you may see a girl that you may be interested in, and the first impulse that you may have is just to be like, oh, I want to pursue her. But then something tells you, you start to maybe judge her and be like, oh, she doesn't have this, she doesn't have this. And then that will make you like, satisfy yourself and like, oh, I'm not actually scared. She just doesn't have what I'm attracted to. When initially you had that initial impulse, but that's fear now taking over that initial love that you had, or that discernment. And I'm not saying that it may be lust, but at the end of the day, you wouldn't know until you pursue it. And what I was able to do, over a long period of time is to break that pattern and be able to recognize, what type of discernment that I would have, if I continue to trust more of the loving side of things. And that's what brought me to where I am now, to where I have a muscle that's built off of, respecting that source and that calling, and being able to turn that into basically a manifestation of a life that I wouldn't have able to explore. So now that I am able to explore it, it's really, continuing to build upon that and trusting that even more. That's what brings me on these mountains in the morning. It's like more of exercising that impulsive nature to be able to create, to be able to put my thoughts on stream, to be able to be vulnerable with my live chats, and be able to, just reciprocate the energy necessary for continued growth And that's what I like to, explore. And I see that could be fruits from that, exercise from off of the fruits that I've experienced from the previous ways. There's another trail that I could take just to see what's going on. I don't know if I'm ready. I think I'm gonna play it safe. The sun is on nice this morning. Play it safe. But it's the whole thing. It's like risk and reward. You got to measure certain risk, certain reward. I got to get back home to my son. I watch him on a full-time basis. But I get to do these little creative pursuits in between. And that's something that I really enjoy. It's just starting my morning off with a real refreshing outlook on life. And yeah, man, it's something that I will continue to be on a journey towards, bringing more people along in the physical and also, here in the mental space, like shared on stream. But that's the main aspect of what I'm trying to just explore and exercise, is that ability to basically nurture that impulsive feeling that has brought me thus far. And it's really like the solidifying aspect was, that brought me to South Africa, was really, having that built up period before the COVID, the pre-pandemic area of pursuing hip hop. And then having like I would say like this is the test of what I've built up in terms of seeing that I can trust my discernment and trust my intuition to follow a path that isn't traditional in terms of pursuing hip hop, seeing some level of success with it. And then now having to transition out of it because of the pandemic. You can't really tour anymore. Like I went on 3 nationwide tours, opening up for artists that were from where I'm from. So it was a lot of alignment. But then when COVID kind of happened, it, slowed that down. But before COVID happened, I was able to travel to South Africa for the first time with my family. And that's where I met my Kotiwami. I was able to visit her home in EThekwini, Ikaya. Where to? No, Sake. In EThekwini, Ikaya, Sake. And when I was in her home, she made me feel comfortable. And it was more than basically just her beauty. It was more so her heart that I was able to really cherish. And these things gonna get me. They got a lot of them. I kind of want to leave some out here for the next times I come out. But these granadillas be crushing. Yeah. Gotta bring some back home from Diniwami. Gotta bring some back home from a Diniwami. Got some granadillas, live from the mountains of South Africa. And this is how I start my mornings. Have me some nourishment, some breakfast, some good breath of fresh air, being able to see the serenity of God's work, We're thankful for our Creator, our greatest ancestors. Yeah, that's the type of time we on. And I'm explaining, a little bit of how, in that transition from being able to nurture basically that intuitive just, inkling that you may get from having a higher source. You kind of got to take leaps of faith. And, I was able to exercise that in a career aspect through the vessel of hip hop, which is a non-traditional path. And it was just an inner calling that was telling me to do that. I was successful in some sense, but it slowed down during the pandemic. But before the pandemic started really, I was able to travel to South Africa with my passion and being able to meet my wife. It was like the last test of, okay, do you really trust? Or have you really broken away from the fear? And are you now really going to allow for love to really carry you to a whole new realm, basically? And that's kind of like what I trusted. It was all for building up the courage, building up the confidence. And then now that I met this person, it wasn't really just the looks or, the inner beauty. It was more so just the ability to recognize that my heart was ready for what I can recognize, basically a true calling, a true love outside of my own calling. It was like, now it's time to go on a joint calling and to build a life with somebody. And it was hard for a lot of people to understand that decision, but it was something that I was able to build the confidence of off of my experience. And it's brought me to where I am today in South Africa, enjoying my life, enjoying these mountain airs, and enjoying my kote wami, my son, Wentwana wami, and being able to be a father, and being able to just, continue pursuing this creative path, but just now on a universal stage. And yeah, that's kind of like my tone of the message today, is to continue to enjoy what the, practice of being alive, in Kapila, being alive, being, Ubuntu, enjoying humanity, embracing, embodying humanity and the human experience. That is something that I really have been gravitating towards as of recent, and it's brought me to areas where I can share with you guys this journey. And it's a pursuit that I feel like will encourage a lot more of attraction to what I have going on in terms of my creative pursuits in writing. I just dropped the article on Substack. I have the students that I'm about to be teaching in Kwandangezi in the upcoming month of August, and I want y'all to tag along for that journey as well. But yeah, this is only the beginning, man. I think that y'all will continue to enjoy what I have to offer in terms of my analysis and my just perspective on the explorations that I'm able to take. But yeah, the main message is just, trust that love, have more of a trust in your impulse, but first test it through some type of avenue that will allow for you to see, if this guidance that you're getting is actual, a true source of love, or is it like operating out of fear? First you test that, and then life will bring you a full test, in which I was able to explore, and I think I aced it. My girl, my kote wami is quite, Leashly, beautiful. She's beautiful, inside and out, and we able to now build a beautiful son that I'm able to raise, and being able to practice more of, what it is that I feel is my calling, which is not only just being a creator, but being a physical creator, like being a father is one of the biggest gifts that, this world affords us. And yeah, I'm thankful. Siyabonga mkhulu mkhulu wethu. Siyabonga umndeni wami. Siyabonga ikaya wethu. Siyabonga South Africa. Siyabonga America. Siyabonga. Sorry, I sound Italian. That's funny. But yeah, man, that's going to end my stream for today. Shout out to y'all. Peace.